Dressed for a new life, how losing my job made me find myself. I used to believe that life was about stability. You find a good job, you work hard, you provide for your family, and you keep your head down. For 12 years, that was my mantra. Ethan Wells, Senior Project Coordinator. It had a nice, solid ring to it. It meant a mortgage, a reliable sedan, and a dinner out with my wife, Marianne, every other Friday. It was predictable, it was safe, and I thought it was all I ever wanted. The day it all fell apart started like any other Tuesday. I wore my gray suit, the one that was just a little too tight in the shoulders, and a blue tie that Marianne said brought out my eyes. I sat through a morning meeting about third quarter projections, nodding in all the right places and making a few notes on my legal pad that I knew I'd never look at again. It was the very definition of routine. At 2:15 p.m., I got an email from HR, urgent meeting. My stomach did a slow cold flip. Urgent meetings were never good. They were for reprimands or worse, for what was happening to me. My boss, a man named Dave who had the personality of a damp spreadsheet, sat across a polished mahogany table, refusing to make eye contact. A woman from HR, whose name I could never remember, sat beside him, holding a stiff file folder. "Ethan," Dave started, finally looking at a spot on the wall just over my left shoulder. "As you know, the company is undergoing a significant restructuring to optimize our operational synergies." He said synergies like it was a word that actually meant something. I knew what it meant. It was corporate speak for "you're fired." "Due to this restructuring," he continued, his voice a flat monotone, "your position as Senior Project Coordinator has been eliminated, effective immediately." The words hung in the sterile, air-conditioned space. Eliminated. Not me, just my position. As if I were a line item that could be deleted with a keystroke. For 12 years, I had given this company my time, my energy, my best ideas. I'd missed school plays and anniversary dinners for last-minute deadlines. And just like that, I was eliminated. The HR woman slid the folder across the table. It was filled with papers about severance, COBRA insurance, and outplacement services. She explained the details in a soft, practiced voice, the kind of voice you use to deliver bad news without accepting any of the emotional fallout. I didn't hear a word she said. All I could hear was a roaring in my ears. "You'll have until the end of the day to clear out your desk," Dave said. Finally standing up, it was a dismissal. He offered a clammy, brief handshake. "We appreciate your service. Ethan, best of luck in your future endeavors." And that was it, 12 years. Over in less than 5 minutes. Walking back to my cubicle felt like walking through a dream, or a nightmare. A few of my colleagues glanced up, saw the look on my face, and immediately looked back down at their screens, suddenly fascinated by their emails. Their avoidance was a physical blow, a confirmation that I was no longer one of them. I was a ghost, haunting the place where I had once belonged. I found a cardboard box from the supply closet and started packing. A framed photo of Marianne and me on vacation in Maine. A stupid coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Employee." A collection of well-worn pens. Each item felt like a relic from another man's life. With every object I placed in the box, I felt a piece of my identity crumbling away. Ethan Wells, Senior Project Coordinator, was being packed away, too. The drive home was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. What was I going to tell Marianne? She was the strong one, the practical one. She'd built her little fashion boutique, Mirror Light, from the ground up with passion and grit. I was the stable one, the one with the steady paycheck and the benefits. Now, I was just unemployed, a failure. When I walked through the door, she was in the kitchen, humming along to some indie rock station while chopping vegetables. The scent of garlic and onions filled the air. She looked up and smiled, and for a second, my world felt normal again. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her smile faltering as she saw the box in my hands and the expression on my face. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I set the box down on the floor. It made a dull, final thud. "They let me go," I said, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. Restructuring. My position was eliminated. I expected tears or anger or at least a flurry of panicked questions about the mortgage. But Marianne just wiped her hands on her apron, walked over, and wrapped her arms around my neck. I buried my face in her shoulder, breathing in her scent of soap and spices, and for the first time since 2:15 p.m., I felt like I could breathe again. We stood there for a long time. She didn't press for details. She just held me, letting me absorb the shock. Finally, she pulled back and looked me in the eyes, her own gaze clear and steady. "Okay," she said, her tone surprisingly calm. "So that chapter is over. Now we figure out the next one." Later that evening, after a mostly silent dinner, we sat on the couch, the television off. The silence was heavy with unspoken fears. "I'll start looking for something tomorrow," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Update my resume, call some recruiters." "Nah." Marianne shook her head slowly. "Ethan, the market is tough. It might take a while. And honestly, did that job ever make you happy?" I opened my mouth to say, "Of course it did. It was a good job." But the words wouldn't come out. Happy it was, a job. It paid the bills. I'd never really stopped to ask myself if it brought me joy. "I have an idea," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It's not perfect, but it could help us out in the short term, and it would help me out too." I looked at her, confused. "I need help at the boutique," she explained. "Business has been picking up, and I'm drowning in paperwork and inventory. I need someone to manage the stockroom, handle the ordering, the boring back-end stuff you're so good at." She gave me a small, hopeful smile. "And maybe you could help out on the floor sometimes, help customers with their bags, maybe even with trying things on." I stared at her. Me and her store. Mirror Light Boutique was Marianne's world. It was a universe of silk and lace, of soft lighting and dreamy pastels, of things I didn't understand and had never tried to. "Marianne, I don't know anything about women's clothes," I said, a humorless laugh escaping my lips. "I'd be useless." "You're organized, you're good with numbers, and you're great with people when you're not stuck in a stuffy office," she countered. "That's all I need for the back room. The rest you can learn." She reached out and took my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "Please, Ethan, just for a little while, until you find something else. Think about it. It would be a huge help to me, and it would give you something to do besides sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself." She was right, of course. The thought of sitting at home all day, sending out resumes into the digital void, felt like a slow death. As much as the idea of working in a women's boutique made my skin crawl with a strange mix of embarrassment and inadequacy, it was better than nothing. It was a lifeline. "Okay," I sighed, the word tasting like surrender. "Okay, I'll do it, but it's just temporary." Marianne's smile lit up her entire face. She leaned in and kissed me. A real kiss, full of promise and relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "You won't regret it." I had no idea then how true that statement would turn out to be. I thought I was just taking a temporary job to bridge a gap, to survive a fall. I didn't realize I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to step into a completely different life. My old world had been eliminated. A new one was just beginning. Mirror Light Boutique was exactly as I'd always pictured it from my brief. Awkward visits a world designed by women. For women, the moment you stepped inside. You were enveloped in a soft, welcoming glow from dozens of small, artfully placed lamps. The air smelled faintly of lavender and vanilla. A custom scent Marianne had developed with a local perfumer. Racks of clothing were arranged not by size, but by color and style, creating a landscape of textures: the shimmer of satin, the delicate web of lace, the soft weight of cashmere. It was less a store and more of a dreamscape, and I felt like a lumbering ogre who had accidentally stumbled into a fairy's closet. My first day was a lesson in humility. My world of spreadsheets and project timelines had been replaced by invoices for silk blouses and boxes filled with tissue paper-wrapped garments that all looked impossibly fragile. My official title was inventory manager, but my real job was to stay out of the way. Marianne introduced me to her only other employee, a young woman named Lena. Lena was a whirlwind of contradictions. She had a sharp, pixie haircut and a collection of tattoos peeking out from the sleeves of her t-shirts. But she could talk about the delicate construction of a French seam with the passion of a seasoned couturier. Her style was what you'd call tomboyish jeans, boots, Band tease, but she moved through the boutique with a dancer's grace, her eyes missing nothing. She was the one tasked with training me. Okay, so this is the stockroom, she said, gesturing to a space that felt about the size of my old cubicle, crammed floor to ceiling with boxes. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make sense of this. First rule of Mirror Light, everything has a place. Second rule, if you can't find its place, ask me. Third rule, don't mess with the steamer. It has a personality, and it hates new people. I spent the first week in that stockroom, feeling like a clumsy giant. I unpacked boxes, carefully logged every item into a spreadsheet, a small, comforting piece of my old life, and tried to learn the difference between A-line, sheath, and mermaid silhouettes. Lena would pop in and out, quizzing me. What's this, she'd ask, holding up a lacy, complicated-looking garment. Aw, shirt. It's a camisole. Ethan, made of silk charmeuse. Notice the bias cut it drapes. It doesn't just hang. I was hopelessly out of my element. The world of men's clothing was simple shirts, pants, suits. You picked a size and a color. This was a different language, a secret code of fabrics and cuts that seemed designed to intimidate me. I walked through the main floor of the boutique on eggshells, terrified I would knock over a mannequin or accidentally smudge a pristine white dress with my clumsy fingers. The turning point, the first tiny crack in my wall of awkwardness, came during my second week. It was a busy Saturday afternoon. Marianne was with a client in the dressing room, and Lena was ringing up a long line of customers at the counter. A woman in her late 40s, with a worried look on her face, was staring helplessly at a rack of formal dresses. I was just supposed to be straightening a display of scarves, but she caught my eye and gave me a desperate smile. "Excuse me," she said. "Could you help me for a second?" I froze. You should probably talk to Lana," I stammered, gesturing toward the line at the register. "Oh, I don't want to bother her. She's so busy. It's just, I have a wedding to go to next month, and I have no idea what to wear. I feel like nothing looks good on me anymore." Her shoulders slumped a little as she said it, a look of defeat I recognized from my own reflection lately. Something in her expression resonated with me. I knew what it felt like to feel lost and out of place. Before I could stop myself, I heard myself saying, "What's the dress code?" She blinked, surprised. "Oh, cocktail attire." I looked at the dress she was holding, a frilly pastel number that seemed too young for her. Then I looked at her. She had a nice figure, a defined waist that was hidden under a baggy sweater. "You know," I said, the words coming from a place I didn't know existed. "I think something with a more structured waist would be incredible on you, something that accentuates your shape instead of hiding it." I walked over to another rack, my hand hovering for a moment before landing on a deep emerald green dress. It was a simple sheath dress with a wrap-style top that created a V-neck. The fabric was a heavy crepe that I knew, from my recent education, would hang beautifully. "What about this one?" I suggested. "The color would be amazing with your hair, and the cut is classic. It's elegant, not trendy." She took the dress from me, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You really think so?" "I do," I said, surprised by my own conviction. She disappeared into a dressing room. A few minutes later, she emerged, and the transformation was stunning. The dress fit her perfectly, hugging her curves in all the right places and falling gracefully to her knees. The V-neck elongated her neck, and the deep green made her skin glow. She looked confident, sophisticated, and beautiful. She stared at herself in the mirror, a slow, genuine smile spreading across her face. "Wow," she whispered. I love it." She turned to me, her eyes shining. "Thank you so much. You have a wonderful eye for this. Are you a stylist?" I felt a blush creep up my neck. "Oh no, I just work here." She bought the dress as she was leaving. She stopped by the stockroom door where I was pretending to be busy organizing shoe boxes. "Thank you again," she said. "You really made my day." After the store closed, Lena came over while I was sweeping the floor. "I saw what you did with Mrs. Peterson," she said, a small knowing smirk on her face. "She's one of our toughest customers. I've been trying to get her out of pastels for years." "I just grabbed a dress," I mumbled, feeling embarrassed. "No," Lena said, her expression turning serious. "You didn't just grab a dress, you saw her. Most people just try to sell a product. You saw what she needed to feel good. That's a different skill entirely. Later that night, as Marianne and I were washing the dishes, I told her about what had happened. She listened intently, a proud smile playing on her lips. "I knew it," she said, bumping her hip against mine. "I knew you had it in you." "It was a lucky guess, that's all." "Was it?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. "Or maybe you're just more suited to this world than you think. Ethan Wells." I just laughed it off. But as I went to bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The feeling of seeing that woman's face light up in the mirror, the satisfaction of knowing I had helped her find a piece of herself she thought she had lost. It was a feeling I hadn't had in a long, long time. It was a strange, unfamiliar warmth, a flicker of something that might have been happiness. A quiet curiosity began to bloom in the back of my mind. A tiny seed of a question what else was hiding in this world of mirrors and light that I had yet to discover. The days turned into weeks, and a strange new rhythm began to settle into my life. I was getting better at my job. I could now tell the difference between chiffon and georgette, and I could steam a silk blouse without leaving a single wrinkle. I even started offering opinions when asked, suggesting a belt to cinch a waist or a different neckline to flatter a customer's shoulders. The boutique was no longer an alien landscape. It was becoming familiar territory, but I was still an outsider, a man in a woman's world, observing from the sidelines. The moment everything changed happened on a dreary, rain-soaked Thursday afternoon. The sky was the color of wet cement, and the rain came down in relentless sheets, drumming against the large front window of the boutique. We hadn't had a single customer in over an hour. Lena was perched on a stool behind the counter, sketching in a notebook, while I was meticulously refolding a stack of cashmere sweaters that were already perfectly folded. The silence was comfortable, broken only by the rain and the soft indie music playing from the store's speakers. Lena looked up from her sketchbook, her eyes landing on a new arrival hanging on a special display mannequin near the front. It was a wrap dress, made of a fluid, shimmering silk the color of a peacock's feather, a deep, iridescent green-blue. It was beautiful, elegant, and impossibly feminine. "You know," Lena said, her voice casual, but with a mischievous glint in her eye. "I bet you could pull that dress off." I stopped folding. "What?" "That dress," she said, nodding toward the mannequin. "The color would be good on you, and the cut is surprisingly forgiving. I bet you'd look better in it than the model from the catalog." I let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a ridiculous, absurd idea. Me in a dress? No way, not in a million years. "Why not?" she challenged, hopping off her stool and walking over to the dress, her fingers tracing the silky fabric. "There's no one here. It's just us. What are you so afraid of?" Her question hung in the air between us. Afraid? Of course I was afraid. I was a 40-something unemployed project coordinator. I was a man. Men didn't wear dresses. It was a fundamental rule of the universe, like gravity or taxes. It felt wrong, forbidden. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, was always curious. I had spent weeks surrounded by these beautiful things, feeling the fabrics, admiring the cuts. I understood, on an intellectual level, why a woman would love wearing them, but I had no idea what it actually felt like. "It's a stupid idea." "Lena," I said, my voice coming out a little harsher than I intended. "Is it?" she said softly, her gaze unwavering. "Or is it just something you've never allowed yourself to consider? Think of it as market research. How can you really sell these clothes if you don't understand how they feel on a body?" Her logic was clever, a neat little Trojan horse designed to slip past my defenses. It was for work, of course, for research. It wasn't personal. It didn't mean anything. "Come on, Ethan," she coaxed, her voice a low murmur. "Just for 5 minutes. No one will ever know. It'll be our secret." I looked at the rain-streaked window, then back at her expectant face. My heart was starting to beat a little faster. It was a dare, a stupid, harmless dare on a slow, rainy afternoon. What was the worst that could happen? "Fine," I heard myself say, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. 5 minutes, and you can't laugh. "I won't," she promised, though her smile was electric. Scout's honor. She led me to the largest fitting room. the one with the three-way mirror and the plush velvet chair. She handed me the dress, its silk fabric cool and impossibly light in my hands. "I'll be right outside," she said, pulling the heavy curtain closed, leaving me alone with my reflection and the shimmering piece of clothing. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at myself in the mirror. I saw Ethan Wells, a man with thinning hair, tired eyes, and the soft beginnings of a paunch. This was ridiculous. I should just walk out and tell her I'd changed my mind. But I didn't. Slowly, methodically, as if disarming a bomb, I started to undress. My tie came first, the familiar knot loosening, feeling like a release. Then my button-down shirt, the stiff cotton falling away. I was left standing in my thin, white undershirt and trousers. I held up the dress. It was just a piece of fabric, expertly cut and sewn, but it felt like so much more. Taking a deep breath, I slipped it over my head. The sensation was immediate and shocking. The silk slithered over my skin, a cool, liquid caress that raised goosebumps on my arms. It was nothing like the rough, sturdy fabrics I was used to. It was soft, weightless, and alive. It whispered against my body, moving with an easy grace that was entirely foreign to me. My hands fumbled with the wraparound ties. I had seen Marianne and Lena tie these 100 times. You cross one side over, loop the sash through a small hole at the waist, and then wrap it around to tie it at the side. My fingers felt thick and clumsy, but I finally managed a simple knot. I stood there for a second with my eyes closed, just feeling it, the way the fabric draped over my shoulders, the way the skirt swirled softly around my knees. It was comfortable, shockingly so. It wasn't constricting like a suit or binding like jeans. It was liberating. Then, I opened my eyes and looked in the mirror. The man I expected to see a clumsy, comical parody wasn't there. The person looking back at me was someone else. The V neckline of the wrap dress softened the line in my jaw and made my shoulders seem less broad. The way it cinched at the waist gave my blocky torso a hint of a shape. The deep jewel-toned color was, as Lena had predicted, surprisingly flattering against my pale skin. I didn't look like a woman, but I didn't quite look like the Ethan Wells I knew. Either. The dress didn't transform me. It revealed something else, a different silhouette hidden beneath the one I had always known. I turned to the side, then looked in the three-way mirror. The fabric flowed, creating an illusion of grace that I had never possessed. I was so lost in the reflection that I jumped when Lena's voice came from behind the curtain. "Everything okay in there?" "Yeah," I croaked, my voice sounding strained. I'm in it." "Can I see?" My first instinct was to say no. This was a private, bizarre moment, but she had been the one to push me, to dare me. I took another deep breath and pulled back the curtain. Lena was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, her eyes swept over me, and her playful smirk softened into something else, something I couldn't quite read. It wasn't pity or amusement. It was appreciation. "Wow," she said, her voice quiet. I was right. She walked over and, without asking, reached out to adjust the fabric on my shoulder, her touch light and professional. "See, the line of the shoulder is perfect, and the way it drapes, it really works." I just stared at our reflections in the mirror, this strange tableau of the tomboyish girl in jeans and the middle-aged man in a silk dress. I looked not bad. The thought was so unexpected it almost made me dizzy. "How do I not look ridiculous?" I asked, the question coming out as a genuine whisper. Lena met my gaze in the mirror. She smiled, a small, genuine smile. "Because it suits you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't just fit the dress. Ethan, you look like you're finally yourself." Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow. My heart, which had been thumping a nervous rhythm, suddenly started to pound, a deep resonant drumming in my chest. It wasn't just about the silk on my skin or the strange reflection in the mirror anymore. In that moment, with Lena's quiet validation, a door I never even knew existed had just creaked open in my soul, and I had the terrifying, exhilarating feeling that I would never be able to close it again. The dare on that rainy Thursday wasn't an end, it was a beginning, a dangerous, thrilling, An utterly confusing beginning. I couldn't get the feeling out of my head, the whisper of silk against my skin, the startling image in the mirror, Lena's quiet words of affirmation. It was like a song I couldn't stop humming. I started staying late at the boutique. Long after Marianne and Lena had gone home, I'd tell Marianne I was catching up on inventory logs or reorganizing the stockroom, but my real work began after I locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed. Under the soft, forgiving glow of the store's nighttime lighting, I would venture out of the stockroom and approach the racks of clothes, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. I told myself it was just an extension of Lena's market research argument, to be a better employee. I needed to understand the product. I needed to know how a skirt moved, how a blouse draped, how a particular fabric felt. It was a flimsy excuse, a lie I told myself to make it all feel less personal, less real. My first few experiments were cautious. I'd try on a simple satin blouse, feeling the cool, smooth fabric against my chest, then a flowing A-line skirt, marveling at the way it swirled around my legs when I turned. Each time I looked in the mirror, the initial shock was replaced by that same deep, unsettling curiosity. Who was this person looking back at me? It was my face, my body, but adorned in a way that changed everything. The clothes softened my angles, reshaped my silhouette, and seemed to coax out a different kind of posture, a different way of holding myself. One evening, I got bolder. There was a simple black jersey dress, the kind of thing Marianne called a wardrobe staple. It was modest, with long sleeves and a hem that fell below the knee. I slipped it on. The stretchy fabric clung to my frame in a way that was both revealing and comforting. I walked out onto the main floor, the soft carpet muffling my steps. I caught my reflection in one of the large ornate mirrors that lined the walls, and I just stood there, watching. I was so absorbed that I didn't hear the quiet click of the back door opening. "Ethan." Marianne's voice cut through the silence. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I was caught. My first instinct was to run, to hide, to rip the dress off. A wave of shame so powerful it was nauseating washed over me. She walked slowly from the back office, her purse still on her shoulder. She must have forgotten something. Her eyes found me, standing frozen in the middle of her beautiful store, wearing a black dress. I braced myself for the explosion, for the anger, the confusion, the disgust. But it never came. She just stopped a few feet away from me, her expression unreadable. She looked at me, really looked at me. From the dress to the panicked expression on my face, the silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she spoke, her voice impossibly gentle. "When you look at yourself in the mirror right now," she began, her gaze soft and searching, "who do you see?" The question disarmed me completely. I didn't have an answer. I wasn't sure if I saw Ethan, or a fraud, or a stranger. My throat was tight. I don't know. I managed to whisper. She nodded slowly, a deep, thoughtful understanding in her eyes. There was no judgment there, only a quiet curiosity that mirrored my own. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." That night, something shifted between us. The secret was out, but instead of creating a chasm, it seemed to open a new, fragile bridge. A few days later, she approached me as I was closing up the shop. "If you're going to do this," she said, her tone practical, matter of fact, "you should do it right." Before I could ask what she meant, she led me to the small makeup counter at the front of the store. It was a place I usually avoided, a glittering world of powders and potions that felt like alchemy to me. "It's not just about the clothes. You know," she said, picking up a bottle of foundation. "The picture isn't complete." She looked at me, a challenge in her eyes. "If you're going to try, let's try for the whole effect." And so began my real education. Under her patient guidance, my transformation became more profound. She started with the basics. She showed me how to apply a thin layer of liquid foundation, not to mask my face, but to even out my skin tone. I watched, mesmerized, as the slight redness in my cheeks and the dark circles under my eyes seemed to melt away, leaving a smooth, neutral canvas. "See," she said, her fingers gently blending the makeup along my jawline. "It's not about changing you. It's about refining." Next came my eyebrows. Mine were thick and unruly, a typical man's eyebrows, with a pair of tweezers and a steady hand. She expertly plucked and shaped them, creating a subtle, elegant arch. The small change was astonishing. It opened up my eyes, softened my entire expression. The most terrifying moment was the lipstick. She chose a simple, nude shade, something quiet and unassuming. She handed the tube to me. "You do it," she said. My hand was shaking as I brought the lipstick to my lips. The waxy, smooth texture was a bizarre sensation. I looked in the small handheld mirror and saw a stranger's mouth. It was my mouth, but it was finished, defined. The face looking back at me was becoming less and less like the Ethan Wells I knew. The final piece of the puzzle was something I hadn't even considered. One evening, Marianne came home with a large, flat box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a wig. It was a simple, shoulder-length bob, the color of rich, dark chocolate. "Everyone needs good hair," she said with a small smile. With her help, I tucked my own short hair under a wig cap. The feeling of the cap was snug and strange. Then she gently placed the wig on my head. It settled into place, the soft synthetic hair falling to frame my face. She turned me to face the full-length mirror in our bedroom. I looked, and for the first time, I didn't see Ethan Wells wearing a dress and makeup. I saw someone else, a complete person. The wig had been the final, transformative touch, tying everything together. The face in the mirror was softer, the eyes seemed larger, the expression more thoughtful. It was a woman's face, and it was mine. "Hello," Lena said from the doorway of the boutique's back room a few nights later, where I was standing fully transformed for the first time in front of them both. She had been let in on our secret. So who is she? She needs a name. I was speechless. I had no name for this person. Lena tilted her head, studying me. "You look like an Eva," she said decisively. "Elegant, classic, a little bit mysterious." Eva, the name settled over me like a second skin. It felt right. In that moment, wearing a simple navy dress, with a face I barely recognized and a name that was not my own, I felt a dizzying cocktail of emotions. There was still shame, a deep-seated fear of what this all meant, but woven through it was a thread of something powerful and new freedom. When I was Ethan, I was the man who had been fired, the failure, the one who was adrift. But when I looked in the mirror and saw Eva, I saw potential. I saw a quiet strength and a strange, unexpected grace. Eva wasn't a disguise. She was starting to feel like a revelation. Every time she appeared in the mirror, a part of my own soul that had been locked away for decades, a softer, gentler, more observant part was finally given permission to breathe. I was still terrified, but for the first time since I'd lost my job, I felt like I was finding something, instead of just losing everything. The creation of Eva was a turning point. She couldn't stay hidden in the boutique after hours or confined to the mirrors in our bedroom. She was too real, too fully formed. It was Marianne who, once again, pushed me forward. "You know," she said one Friday evening, watching me as Eva effortlessly show a customer how to tie a scarf in 3 different elegant ways. "Eva has a much better sense of style than Ethan does." I froze, caught in the act. The customer I was helping just smiled, assuming Marianne was referring to another employee. "She really does," the woman agreed. "She's wonderful." After the customer left, Marianne turned to me, her expression a mix of business and affection. "I'm serious. You connect with the customers in a way I've never seen. You understand their insecurities. As Eva, you're approachable. You're one of them." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, my heart starting to hammer against the carefully constructed bodice of my dress. "I'm suggesting Eva should work on the floor," she said simply. "Just on weekends, maybe when it's busiest. We can tell everyone she's my cousin from out of town, helping out for a while, a new employee." The idea was insane. It was one thing to be Eva in the privacy of the store at night, or with the quiet acceptance of Marianne and Lena. It was another thing entirely to present her to the world, to the unsuspecting customers of Mirrorlight Boutique. The risk of being discovered, of someone recognizing the man under the wig and makeup, was terrifying. "I can't," I said, shaking my head. "Someone will know, my voice, my hands." "Your voice is softer when you're Eva," Marianne countered. "You've been doing it subconsciously, and your hands are just hands. No one will be looking that closely." They'll see what they expect to see: a helpful, well-dressed woman. Lena, who had been listening from the counter, chimed in. She's right. You carry yourself differently. You're more poised. People won't question it. And so, with a stomach full of butterflies and a head full of doubts, I agreed. The following Saturday, Eva Wells made her official debut as the newest style consultant at Mirrorlight Boutique. The first few hours were nerve-wracking. Every time a customer walked in, I was convinced they would see through the facade. I kept my voice low, my gestures small and deliberate. But Marianne was right. No one looked twice. They saw a tall, dark-haired woman in a tasteful dress, and they accepted her presence without question. More than that, they responded to her. I found that as Eva. I could speak a language I couldn't access as Ethan. I could talk about the emotional power of a good dress, the confidence that comes from the right pair of shoes. I could listen to a woman talk about her body insecurities and truly empathize, because I was living a life full of my own insecurities about my body. Eva was a better listener, a more intuitive stylist, and a more compassionate salesperson than Ethan could ever have been. She was a natural. This secret life, this dual existence, began to change everything, especially my relationship with Marianne. We were no longer just husband and wife. We were co-conspirators, partners in a strange and wonderful game. Our secret became a new form of intimacy. There were small moments, charged with a new kind of energy. One evening, as I was getting ready to leave the store as Eva, I realized I'd snagged the delicate lace stockings I was wearing. "Oh, shoot," I murmured, looking down at the tiny tear near my ankle. Marianne came over, kneeling down in front of me to inspect the damage. "We have others in the back," she said, her hand gently resting on my calf. Her touch was warm, sending a jolt through me that was both familiar and entirely new. It wasn't the familiar touch of my wife. It was something softer, more delicate. She was touching Eva. She came back with a new pair of stockings, still in their package. "Here," she said, her voice a little husky. "Let me help you." She sat on a small stool in front of me. I lifted my foot, and she carefully gathered the delicate fabric of the stocking, sliding it gently over my toes, up my ankle, and over my calf, her fingers brushing against my skin. We were both silent, the only sound the soft rustle of the nylon. Her eyes were focused on her task, but I could feel the intensity of the moment. Her hands, which I knew so well, felt different as they smoothed the lace top of the stocking against my thigh. When she looked up, her eyes met mine, and her gaze held for a beat longer than usual. It was a look of rediscovery, of seeing the person she had loved for 15 years in a completely new light. In that moment, she wasn't just seeing her husband, the man who used to work in an office. She was seeing this new person, this softer, more vulnerable creation we had built together, and I could see in her eyes that she loved this person, too. Our relationship, which had been strained by my job loss and the quiet anxieties of middle age, was being rekindled in the most unexpected way. When I was Eva, I was more open, more attuned to emotion, both mine and hers. I listened more. I was more present, and Marianne responded to that. She saw the man she had fallen in love with resurfacing, not in spite of the dresses and makeup, but because of them. The layers of corporate stiffness and masculine expectation that I had worn for years were being peeled away, and the person underneath was someone she was getting to know all over again. Our secret life was a delicate dance. We were navigating new territory, rediscovering the boundaries of our love and our identities. It was confusing and complicated, but it was also filled with a tenderness and a shared intimacy that felt more profound than anything we had experienced before. It was our beautiful, shared secret, held within the soft, dreamy glow of the Mirrorlight Boutique. Eva's reputation at the boutique grew quietly but steadily. She became the go-to consultant for clients with special occasions, the one they trusted for honest but kind advice. One of our most loyal and influential customers was a woman named Victoria Hawthorne. Victoria was a force of nature, a sharp, impeccably dressed businesswoman who owned a string of successful art galleries. She didn't just buy clothes, she invested in pieces. And she valued true artistry and style above all else. And she was a huge fan of Eva. One afternoon, Victoria came into the store with a specific purpose. She was chairing the city's annual art and fashion gala, a major high society event. "Eva, darling," she said, air kissing me on both cheeks, "I need your help, not for me, for you." She handed me a thick cream-colored envelope. Inside was a lavishly printed invitation to the gala. My name, Miss Eva Wells, was written in elegant calligraphy. "I have a table, and I would be honored if you would be my guest," Victoria said. "I'm tired of being surrounded by stuffy old money. I want to be with people who actually have taste. And you, my dear, have it in spades." I stared at the invitation, my blood running cold. The boutique was one thing. It was our safe space, a controlled environment, but a public gala, filled with the city's elite, photographers, and people who might know me from my old life. The risk of exposure was immense. It was a terrifying leap into the deep end. That night, I showed the invitation to Marianne, my hands trembling slightly. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's too much. What if someone recognizes me? What if it all goes wrong?" Marianne took the invitation from me and placed it on the mantelpiece. Then she took my hands in hers, her grip firm and steady. "Listen to me, Ethan," she said, her eyes boring into mine. "For the past few months, I have watched you transform. You've gone from being a shell of a man, beaten down and lost, to being this vibrant, confident person. Eva isn't just a disguise. She's the part of you that was suffocating in that gray suit for 12 years. She took a deep breath, her voice filled with a fierce passion. "I don't want that person to hide in the shadows. I want the world to see you. Not your old boss, not your former colleagues who ignored you. I want them to see the amazing person you are now, the person who is brave enough to be vulnerable, to be beautiful, to be real. This isn't about them recognizing Ethan. This is about them finally meeting Eva." Her words were a balm and a challenge. She wasn't just encouraging me. She was telling me she believed in Eva, and in me. Her faith gave me the courage I didn't know I had. "Okay," I said, the words small but firm. "I'll go." The night of the gala was a whirlwind of meticulous preparation. It was more than just getting dressed. It was a ritual of creation. The day started with a professional manicure. My nails shaped and painted a subtle, pearlescent pink. It felt both decadent and strangely centering to have my hands, which I'd always seen as clumsy and masculine, treated with such delicate care. That evening, Marianne turned our bedroom into a full-fledged dressing room. She had chosen the dress herself, a floor-length evening gown in a deep midnight blue satin that shimmered under the light. It was an off-the-shoulder design, elegant and classic. The process of becoming Eva for the gala was the most intensive yet. It began with the foundation of it all, the underpinnings. For the first time, I wore a real corset. Marianne helped me lace it up, the constriction tight but not painful. It reshaped my torso, creating a higher, more defined waist and improving my posture instantly. I had to breathe more shallowly, from my chest, which in itself made me feel more delicate. We used silicone forms, or breast enhancers, to create a subtle, believable curve under the bodice of the gown, a final touch that completed the feminine silhouette. Marianne did my makeup with the focus of an artist, creating a soft, smoky eye and a classic red lip. Then came the hair. We had invested in a high-quality, human hair wig for the occasion, styled into soft, glamorous waves that cascaded over one shoulder. When the transformation was complete, Marianne stepped back. She walked around me, making one last adjustment to a stray curl, smoothing the satin of the dress over my hip. Finally, she took a bottle of perfume from her dresser, a scent I'd always loved on her. A complex blend of jasmine and sandalwood, and spritzed it lightly onto my wrist and neck. The scent enveloped me, a final invisible veil of femininity. I took a deep breath, and it was as if I had inhaled Eva herself. The man I was, the anxiety and the fear, seemed to recede, replaced by her calm and grace. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I felt a surge of something that wasn't just acceptance, but pride. The person looking back at me was elegant, poised, and beautiful. She was ready. Arriving at the gala was like stepping into another world. The ballroom was a sea of glittering chandeliers, champagne glasses, and designer gowns. For a moment, panic seized me, but then Marianne, who was my +1 and looked absolutely stunning in a silver-beaded dress, squeezed my hand. "You belong here," she whispered. Victoria Hawthorne greeted us with effusive hugs. "Eva, you look breathtaking," she declared, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Absolutely breathtaking. She introduced me to her circle as the most talented stylist in the city, and no one batted an eye. They saw a striking woman on the arm of a powerful benefactor, and they accepted it. The evening was a blur of polite conversation, air kisses, and compliments. I talked about art with a gallery owner, fashion with a designer, and philanthropy with a woman on the board of the city museum. No one suspected a thing. They were not looking for a man in a dress. They were looking at Eva Wells, and they liked what they saw. The highlight of the night came when the band started playing a slow waltz. I was standing by the terrace, catching my breath, when Marianne appeared at my side. "May I have this dance?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. I smiled. "I'd love to." She led me onto the dance floor. As she put her hand on my waist and I placed mine on her shoulder, a profound sense of peace washed over me. Here we were, in the middle of this grand ballroom, surrounded by strangers, living our secret out in the open, under the warm golden light of the chandeliers. We moved together, a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, two people in love, dancing without any boundaries between them. She looked up at me, her face glowing with love and pride. "You see," she murmured, her voice soft enough for only me to hear, "this is who you are." At that moment, a photographer from a society magazine snapped our picture. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, holding my wife a little closer. For the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly whole. I wasn't Ethan pretending to be Eva. I was just myself, a person who contained both, and I had never felt more free. The gala was more than just a successful night out. It was a catalyst. The photograph of Marianne and me dancing appeared in a local society magazine. The caption read, "Fashion maven Marianne Wells with the elegant Eva Wells at the Art and Fashion Gala." The world had seen Eva, accepted her, and even celebrated her. After that night, there was no putting her back in the box. The experience had fundamentally changed me. The deep-seated shame that had been my constant companion was fading, replaced by a quiet confidence. The fear of being discovered was lessening, overshadowed by the joy of being seen. I could no longer draw a clear line between Ethan and Eva. They weren't two separate identities. They were two sides of the same person, and I was beginning to understand that I needed both to be complete. Life after the gala settled into a new, extraordinary normal. Eva's role at the boutique expanded. She was no longer just a weekend helper. She was the lead stylist, taking on high-end clients by appointment. Women like Victoria Hawthorne recommended their friends, and soon Eva Wells had a waiting list of clients who wanted her keen eye and compassionate approach. I had found a new career, one that was born not from a college degree or a corporate ladder, but from the most authentic part of myself. My life became a carefully balanced dance. On weekdays, I was still Ethan. I'd do the grocery shopping in jeans and a polo shirt, handle the boutique's bookkeeping, and have coffee with the other husbands in the neighborhood. But on weekends, and for my client appointments, I became Eva. The transition was no longer a source of anxiety. The ritual of dressing, of applying makeup, of putting on the wig, became a peaceful, meditative process. It was less like putting on a costume and more like stepping into a part of myself that was waiting. The psychological shift was profound. I stopped thinking of it as cross-dressing. That term felt clinical, like a hobby or a fetish. This was deeper. This was about my identity. I wasn't a man wearing women's clothes. I was a person expressing the feminine part of my soul, a part that had been dormant for 40 years. Eva was my grace, my intuition, my creativity. Ethan was my stability, my history, my logic. I needed both. Marianne was the anchor through it all. Our love deepened into a partnership that transcended traditional roles. She loved Ethan, the man who fixed the leaky faucet and remembered her favorite kind of wine. And she loved Eva, the woman who could help her zip up a dress and give her honest feedback on a new hairstyle. She loved the whole person I was becoming. Our intimacy was no longer just about the physical. It was about the profound trust and acceptance we shared, the beautiful secret that had become our open truth. One late summer evening, about a year after I'd lost my job, Marianne and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the sky bleed into shades of orange and purple. I was wearing a simple, comfortable linen sundress, feeling the cool evening breeze on my skin. I wasn't fully Eva, no makeup, no wig, just my own short hair. And I wasn't fully Ethan either. I was just Biko and me. I reached over and took Marianne's hand, lacing my fingers through hers. Her hand felt small and warm in mine. "You know," I said, my voice quiet and reflective, "I used to think that getting fired was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I thought my life was over." I looked at her, my heart swelling with a gratitude so immense it almost hurt. I never imagined that losing that job would be the thing that helped me find myself. Marianne smiled, a soft, knowing expression on her face. She leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder, her touch as comfortable and natural as breathing. "You didn't lose anything that truly mattered, Ethan," she said softly, her voice a warm murmur against my skin. "You just finally made room. You just finally found her inside of you." I looked out at the fading light, at the first stars beginning to prick the darkening sky. She was right. I hadn't lost myself. I had found the missing pieces. The rigid, unhappy man in the gray suit was gone, and in his place was this new, integrated person, a person who understood both the strength of a firm handshake and the delicate power of a silk dress. In that simple sundress, with the gentle wind fluttering the hem around my knees, Ethan, or Eva, it no longer mattered which name you used, smiled. It wasn't a disguise. It was no longer a performance. It was just a person, sitting on a porch with the woman he loved, more complete, more honest, and more whole than ever before. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt truly, completely at peace.